Hello and welcome to Pact Publishing. My name is Atindra Chaturvedi. In this section, we will cover managing vSphere 6.5 availability solutions. We will look at implementing vCenter version 6.5 high availability that's available with the vCenter server appliance. We will also go into great detail about managing vCenter 6.5 high availability by initiating failovers and showing you the specific configurations that can be implemented. We will also look at implementing the vSphere version 6.5 symmetrical multiprocessing fault tolerance that allows fault tolerance for virtual machines that have more than one virtual CPU. We will demonstrate that using a Windows Server 2012 R2 server. In this video, we will look at implementing and managing vCenter Server Appliance version 6.5 high availability. This is a new capability that's available in the vCenter Server Appliance, the VCSA version 6.5. We will also demonstrate the failover capability of the VCSA and give you some pointers as to how you might actually want to implement it in production using anti-affinity rules and the like. So here I am with my vSphere web client logged into a vCenter Server Appliance version 6.5. It's at address 192.168.0.210. And when I go into configure and then vCenter high availability, I can see that vCenter HA is not configured. Now I have to click the configure button to create the HA topology shown below. So let's just take a look at what this topology looks like. So this is the management interface. So this is the vCenter that's active. That's what I'm logged into right now. That's the management interface, and that is at address 192.168.0.210. This is a vCenter high availability network, which is separate from that management interface network, which means that we will need a separate set of IP addresses for this. Not just IP addresses, but we need that to be in a different network. So instead of using 192.168.0 network, I will use the 192.168.1 network, or subnet as some people call it. Now, the management interface is connecting to VNIC 0 for this virtual machine. Obviously, in the configure process, what will happen is that there will be another virtual NIC that will be created here for this virtual machine, and that would have that new address in the 192.168.1 network. What will happen is that the passive vCenter will be created as well as the witness will be created. So let's go into configure. There are two options, basic and advanced. Let's see if we can work with the basic option. I click next. Add a vCenter high availability network adapter on the virtual machine for this vCenter server. And this is dedicated for internal communication between the HA nodes. And this will have that new subnet 192.168.1.195. And its subnet mask will be 255.255.255.0. And we will select the vCenter high availability network. So that's the port group that VNIC will be plugged into. 192.168.1.195 is our active vCenter, the one we are using right now. I click on next. Now I need to add the vCenter HA IP address on that same network. You can see it says 192.168.1.x. So it would be 192.168.1.196. And the witness node, the same thing. It will be 1.y. So 192.168.1.197. So the passive node will be 196. The witness node will be 197. And the active is going to be 195. And remember, this is on VNIC 1. I click next. And then I click next again. vCenter HA cluster will be configured by deploying virtual machines for the passive and witness nodes with the settings displayed below. So the passive will be 196, the witness will be 197, and I will click on Finish. When I do that, I get a notification that, let me look at this here, configure vHA, and we had a notification. And it says the operation is not allowed in the current state because vCenter HA requires SSH daemon to be running. Enable SSH before you can configure the vCenter high availability. Now, in my installation, I had actually checked the box that said enable SSH, or so I believe. So I have to go and enable SSH on this vCenter because it presumably uses a secure shell to then send commands down for the reconfiguration. So I will pause the video until I fix this, and then we will be on our way. So in order to do that, I have to go into Administration and System Configuration. And then I look at the node, that's my node, the actions, edit settings, and then this is where I will be enabling the secure shell login, and for good measure, I'll enable the bash shell as well. So we click OK. Back again to our task. So having fixed the secure shell problem, once again, it's very important to make sure that when you install it, you check the box, otherwise HA can't be configured. Or if you prefer, and for security purposes, the way I did it is probably more preferable because you can turn it on and off. So you can do the appropriate thing as I did by going into the task of enabling the secure shell as we just saw. So we're ready to complete, and we click Finish. We again monitor the recent tasks view for progress updates. And we have the recent tasks here. And here we are. We have the process of deploying a vCenter HA cluster in progress. I will pause here until we have the cluster operational. So it's cloning the virtual machines as we expected it to, and I'll pause the recording. So let's examine the recent tasks and see where we are now. After the reconfiguration of the virtual machine, it was cloned, and now that is being powered on. So let me just expand this a little bit so we have a better idea. So the active appliance was cloned into the peer, and now that is in the process of being powered on. And now it is being cloned again after the peer was powered on. This is presumably the witness. So the cloning of the second virtual machine is nearing completion. We are at 97%. That has completed, and as you can see, the virtual machine that was cloned was the witness, and it is now being powered on. So that was powered on. vCenter HA is enabled. There's a message here. A replication failure might be occurring at the moment. Automatic failover protection is currently disabled. And if the vCenter HA was recently enabled, which is exactly what is going on right now, the initial replication might still be in progress and would take a few minutes. So we can see for our purposes, everything is up and running. And now the badge went to green. So the replication has happened, and all the nodes are now accessible and replication is enabled. Also, automatic failover protection is enabled. So this is how one goes about the process of enabling the vCenter high availability option, which is a tremendous improvement in the vCenter server appliance version 6.5 over anything that has been available before. Now, one item from a design perspective, I think one would probably want to do here is that for this group of virtual machines, the active vCenter server, the passive vCenter server, and the witness, they should really be deployed in a cluster environment, ESXi cluster. And I would probably put an anti-affinity rule in place for this group of virtual machines, so they are distributed among as many hosts in the cluster as is possible to provide you even more redundancy. Also, since you need a common network with common definitions for the vCenter high availability network, using a distributed virtual switch or being very careful with standard switches and assigning a separate port group for the vCenter HA is probably also a good idea, and not the way that I did it here by inserting it into the VM network that I already had in place. So apart from those couple of points, you can see that vCenter HA is rather easy to set up. Please note that the vCenter HA IP address for the active node is 195, for the passive node is 196, and for the witness node is 197. When a failover is initiated, which we will do shortly, the active and the passive IP addresses would be switched. So I'm back in the VMware vSphere web client. I'm logged into a vCenter server appliance version 6.5, which is at address 192.168.0.210. When I go into configure and look at the vCenter high availability settings, I see that vCenter high availability is enabled because I have configured it. And at this point, all vCenter HA nodes are available, are accessible, and replication is enabled, as well as automatic failover protection is enabled. So this is my active vCenter, and it has a high availability network address of .195 on the 192.168.1 subnet or network, as some people call it, 192.168.1.196, and that is where the replication is automatically happening. And if the active machine goes down, then it'll fail over to the passive machine, and then this is the witness, and that is in the same subnet 192.168.1 at address 197. So when you look at the IP settings, it's for the vCenter HA network, it's 192.168.1.195, and the management network, which is the address that I'm looking at right now for the web client, that's where it is listening, is 192.168.0.210. The virtual machine settings. So this is the name of the VMware vCenter server appliance. It's a version 6.5. It's in this data center. It's running on this host. Nothing much to see except that there is a management network NIC and there is a vCenter HA network NIC. It's plugged into the same VM network port group. In real life, you would probably have a separate port group, and you would probably use a completely separate physical NIC, or at least share that physical NIC with some other kind of traffic that is compatible with the amount of usage your vCenters get, so that the replication would be working at a good speed and not be adversely affected. vCenter HA monitoring. Everything is up and running. The PostgreSQL replication mode is synchronous. So really the way this works is that the Postgres database on the passive node is being replicated to from the active side in a synchronous manner. And when the failover happens, that's when a new virtual machine is powered up using that passive replication mode database. So everything is in sync at this point in time. Going back to this, before we go there, let's take a look again. So there's another tab that opens up here, vCenter HA, when this is enabled. Go back to the vCenter HA settings here, and we are going to first do an edit to show you some of these options. So start with the option at the bottom, which is remove the vCenter high availability. That basically removes the high availability configuration, but the active node continues to run normally. You can disable the vCenter high availability, so there's no replication and there's no failover, but the configuration is retained. And of course, you need to have maintenance mode. So replication will be enabled and will happen as long as the passive node is available, but automatic failover is disabled. So really, the active node continues to run normally, even if the passive and witness nodes that may be on a host that you are putting it in maintenance mode are both unavailable, maybe up until the time that they are vMotioned over to another host in that cluster. I cancel out of this. And now we're going to initiate a failover. Now, when I initiate the failover, the passive node will take over the active role. So before we do that, let's take a note of this. The active node currently is at .195 and the passive node currently is at .196. You will see that they will switch identities or the roles, because now you will see the active, after the failover is done, the active will have the address of .196 and the passive will have the address of .195. So when I initiate the failover, after a few moments, I will lose connectivity to my vSphere web client until things start up again. So I will pause the recording after we initiate the failover. Now I could check this box and force the failover to start immediately without waiting for completion of any synchronization. I'm not going to do that, but this is reminiscent of the option that is available in vSphere replication, where you have an option similar to this available also. So let's go through our failover, and I will pause the recording once this is initiated. So let's go to recent tasks, and you can see the failover has been initiated. This is updating, so there's nothing much that is possible here. We are going to lose connectivity very, very soon, and then it'll come back. Okay, a new message comes up after a while. It says the vSphere client web server is initializing, and so it's moving along. And then after a minute or so, I get my single sign-on screen back. We will log in and see what this looks like. Our expectation is that the active and the passive nodes would have switched in terms of their IP addresses. So we are now logged in, and it went straight to the configure vCenter HA screen where it was when I initiated the failover. That's a nice touch. And you can see that the passive node is now 195, and the active node, which earlier was passive, is now 196, and everything else is working fine. Not a big deal at all. So let's look at edit. Let me remove the vCenter high availability configuration, and then we'll take a look at how to actually achieve the vCenter high availability configuration that you just saw work so well. So I removed the configuration, and vCenter HA configuration will be removed. The second network adapter will not be removed from the active node. If I do not manually remove it, and I'll just leave it there, it'll be used the next time you configure vCenter high availability. That's very nice. Should I delete the VMs that are backing the passive and witness nodes? I am actually going to uncheck the box. I want to leave those VMs alone, because when I reinitiate the HA cluster, I'm hoping to be able to reuse them. I click yes, and we have a destroy the vCenter HA cluster task going on. And the vCenter HA cluster is now not in place anymore. Let's see what we have here. So now we are back in a situation where vCenter high availability is not configured. In the next video, we will cover implementing symmetrical multiprocessing fault tolerance, SMP/FT, in vSphere version 6.5 environments. I look forward to seeing you there.